When we recall the tales of World War I, we often envision trenches and helmets, muddy battlefields and western fronts. But beneath the shadow of history lies an untold narrative that challenges the monochromatic perception of this global conflict. Picture a mosaic, a patchwork of stories from diverse backgrounds, each tile representing a unique perspective, a distinct tale of courage and resilience. Today, we delve into the undercurrents of this global event, revealing the overlooked heroes of this tumultuous time. The Black and Asian soldiers. These brave individuals, hailing from the vibrant fields of Punjab, from the Caribbean and the heart of Africa, fought bravely in battles that forever shaped the world. Their stories, often relegated to footnotes, are a testament to their bravery and determination, painting a more vibrant, more diverse picture of a war that transcended borders, colors, and creeds. Imagine the tropical breezes of the Caribbean, replaced by the freezing trenches of Europe, the peaceful fields of Punjab, uprooted by the horrors of war, the vibrant cultures of Africa, thrust into the heart of conflict. These stories of valor are not merely tales of war but narratives of individuals who faced adversity with unwavering resolve, who fought not only against the enemy on the battlefield, but also the enemy of discrimination and inequality. During World War I, the British called on over 3 million soldiers from all over their empire to fight. Before World War I began, Britain and France had colonies in the Caribbean, Africa, and Asia, as well as many other places around the world. Germany also had colonies in Africa, and when the war began, these people in the colonies were called to fight. Imagine leaving the tropical breezes of the Caribbean for the freezing trenches of Europe. These soldiers not only battled the enemy, but also the cold disregard of racism. Today, we lift the veil to reveal the untold stories of the British Caribbean Regiment in the First World War. When war broke out, Black Britons volunteered at recruitment centers and were joined by Caribbean people from the colonies. The British Caribbean people were relishing their freedom after centuries of slavery. Yet many still took pride in their loyalty to the mother country. When World War I began, Caribbean people donated large sums of money to aid the war effort, and many volunteered to fight. They traveled to the mother country at their own expense to support Britain against the Germans. There were Black recruits in all sections of the armed forces. Under the Union Jack they served with distinction, their courage unwavering against the backdrop of a war that consumed the world. Yet they were more than just soldiers. They were pioneers, breaking barriers of race and class, standing shoulder to shoulder with their comrades from around the globe. In 1915, a suggestion for a separate West India regiment to aid the war effort was approved. The British West Indies Regiment was created as a separate black unit within the British Army. The first recruits sailed from Jamaica to Britain in October 1915 to train at a camp near Seaford on the Sussex coast. Over 16,000 black people had joined the British West Indies Regiment by the end of World War I. The majority came from Jamaica. Their military service took them across the globe to England, France, Italy, Egypt, Mesopotamia, now known as Iraq, East Africa, India, Belgium, and Palestine. The black soldiers of the British West Indies Regiment were paid less than their white counterparts and were led mainly by white officers and used as non-combatant soldiers. Most of their time was spent laboring, such as laying telephone wires, loading ammunition, and digging trenches, but they were not permitted to fight as a battalion. By the end of the war, 185 British West Indies Regiment soldiers had been killed or died of wounds. An additional 1,071 died of illness, and 697 were wounded. After the war, many West Indian and African soldiers decided to make a life in Britain. However, despite their service to the mother country, they were subjected to racism in some cities. Their story is one of sacrifice and service, of men who believed in a cause greater than themselves. As we delve into the pages of history, we honor their courage, their resilience, and their indomitable spirit. They remind us that bravery knows no color, that valor transcends borders, and that every soldier has a story worth telling. History has also forgotten the sacrifices made by the people of India. From the fields of Punjab to the peaks of Nepal, South Asian soldiers brought their indomitable spirit to the heart of the conflict. At that time, India included Pakistan, Nepal, Bangladesh, and Sri Lanka. Soldiers were from many ethnic backgrounds, such as Pathans, Sikhs, Muslims, and Hindus. They were farmers, laborers, clerics, and more, men who left behind their familiar landscapes to traverse the treacherous terrains of European battlefields. Over 1 million of these brave souls enlisted in the British Army, driven by a sense of duty, a pursuit of honor, or the promise of a better future. In October 1914, the British deployed the men of their British India Army on the European battlefield. This decision was made within days of the outbreak of hostilities. While the British were still recruiting and training their own forces, it was Indian Jawans, junior soldiers, who stopped the German advance at Ypres in the autumn of 1914. Their contribution was monumental. They were the unseen backbone in many pivotal battles, their strength and courage bolstering the British lines. From the trenches to the front lines, these soldiers stood shoulder to shoulder with their Western counterparts, their valor undiminished by the harsh conditions, the brutal warfare, or the cultural chasms. India contributed a number of divisions and contingents to the European, Mesopotamian, Mediterranean, North African, and East African theaters of war. Indian soldiers were among the first victims who suffered the horrors of the trenches in Europe. They were killed in droves before the war was in its second year. Yet their stories were often eclipsed in the annals of history. Their sacrifices and achievements, their acts of courage and perseverance were largely overlooked, their narratives relegated to the margins of World War I chronicles. The medals they won, the wounds they bore, the lives they lost were seldom acknowledged with the respect and recognition they deserved. Approximately 1.3 million Indian soldiers served in World War I, and more than 74,000 of them lost their lives. But history, like truth, has a way of surfacing. Today, we pay tribute to these unsung heroes, these courageous Asian soldiers who served in the British Army during the Great War. Their battles may have been fought under the Union Jack, but their heroism was their own, their stories a testament to their indomitable spirit and unyielding resilience. In 1947, not long after the Second World War, India gained independence from Britain, and much of its colonial history was lost, despite the great sacrifices and contributions that were made. Now let's switch our gaze to the French tricolor, where African troops were not just fighting, they were setting the Western Front ablaze with their fervor. As the winds of war swept across Europe, they carried with them the echoes of a distant drumbeat, the rhythm of Africa. From the arid sands of the Sahara to the lush rainforests of the Congo, men from across the vast African continent found themselves in the trenches under the French flag. They were the Senegalese tirailleurs, Moroccan goumiers, and the Madagascan volunteers, among others, collectively known as the Black Force. These African soldiers, many from French colonies, were thrust into a war that was worlds apart from their own. Yet they fought with a courage that was nothing short of extraordinary. Their valiance in battles like the Battle of the Somme and Verdun has been etched in the annals of military history, but their bravery was fueled by more than just a sense of duty. It was a battle for recognition, for rights, and above all, for equality. They were promised that their service to the French cause would bring them closer to the French ideals of liberty, equality, and fraternity. They fought in the hope that their sacrifices would pave the way to a better future, not just for themselves but for their people back home. Yet when the smoke of the battlefield cleared and the world embraced peace, these promises turned out to be nothing more than empty words. The same colonial powers that had praised their bravery on the battlefield failed to honor their commitments when the guns fell silent. Despite the betrayal, the legacy of the Black Force is not one of victimhood, but of valor, of men who stood tall in the face of adversity, who fought not just a war of bullets and trenches, but a war for dignity and respect. These warriors from a continent under the yoke of colonization fought for the promise of equality, a promise often betrayed in peace as it was honored in war. They fought for democracy in Europe while being denied it at home. African American soldiers battled a two-front war, one against the enemy abroad, and another against segregation and injustice in their own ranks. After the United States declared war against Germany in April 1917, the U.S. War Department realized they would need more men to guarantee victory. They decided to allow African Americans to sign up. More than 20,000 blacks enlisted in the military, and the numbers increased when the Selective Service Act was passed in May 1917. In some states, African Americans were forced to sign up, and some were fraudulently arrested as draft dodgers. By the 5th of July 1917, over 700,000 black Americans had registered for military service. However, they were barred from the Marines and served only in menial roles in the Navy. Blacks could serve in all branches of the Army except for the aviation units. In the crucible of World War I, the African American experience was a journey of grit, courage, and resilience. More than 380,000 African Americans served in the U.S. Army. However, their battle wasn't just against the German forces. It was also a fight against the entrenched racism and prejudice within their own ranks. African American soldiers were often assigned to segregated units. Despite the pervasive discrimination, these soldiers served with unwavering courage and determination. They faced the enemy head-on in the trenches of Europe, earning respect and commendations for their bravery. Some also served in French units. In early 1918, the 369th United States Infantry, a regiment of African American combat troops, arrived to help the French army. They earned a reputation from the Germans as Hellfighters and were nicknamed the Harlem Hellfighters. They were one of the most decorated units under the command of the French military. The Harlem Hellfighters served longer than any other American unit in World War I. They spent a staggering 191 days in combat. Their gallantry did not go unnoticed. The French government awarded the entire unit the Croix de Guerre, France's highest military honor, for their outstanding service. In a first for African Americans, Eugene Bullard was the first African American military pilot to fly combat in World War I, although he didn't fly for the United States. He was a highly decorated pilot in the French Flying Corps. But the fight did not end with the armistice. Upon returning home, these soldiers found a country still mired in segregation and racial inequality. Their experience in the war, however, had strengthened their resolve. They had fought and bled for their country, and they were determined to fight for their rights at home. The African American soldiers of World War I played a pivotal role in the early civil rights movement. Their service in the war challenged the prevailing racial stereotypes and laid the groundwork for the struggle for racial equality. Their valor was a rallying cry for equality, a dream that would echo through generations. But what about the German side of this global struggle? Africans served under the German Eagle as well, but their stories are shrouded in the complexities of colonial politics. Who were these soldiers? In the German Schutztruppe, African soldiers known as Askaris proved instrumental in colonial campaigns. They were skilled, formidable, and loyal, yet they served within a system that saw them as subordinate. Their service poses challenging questions about loyalty, coercion, and the inescapable shadows of imperialism. The First World War was not just fought in Europe. There were battlegrounds in Africa and Asia, as well as at sea. The war was, after all, an argument between these European colonists, and Africa was swept up in it as Britain, France, Germany, and Italy had carved up Africa between themselves over the centuries. More than 1 million African soldiers were involved in these campaigns. Even more men, as well as women and children, were recruited, often forcibly, as carriers to support armies whose supplies could not be moved by usual methods such as road, rail, or pack animal. Over 150,000 soldiers and carriers lost their lives during the war. Many more were wounded and disabled. By the time the war ended, every country in Africa, with the exception of the small Spanish territories which remained neutral, had been formally committed to one side or the other. Belgian, British, French, Italian, and Portuguese administrations were actively united against German colonies. As the guns fell silent and the world moved on, the contributions of these soldiers did not fade into the darkness. How do we honor their memory today? Black and Asian people lost their lives in these European wars, and their service and sacrifices should never be forgotten. The legacy of these diverse soldiers is a tapestry woven into the fabric of our modern world. It is found in the freedoms we cherish, the boundaries we dissolve, and the unity we strive for. It's time we remember all the heroes of World War I, for their valor knows no color and their sacrifices no bounds. We've journeyed through the trenches of time to bring to light the stories of the unsung soldiers of World War I. Their bravery, their struggles, and their unwavering spirit have shaped the course of history in ways that must never be forgotten. If these stories of heroism beyond boundaries have moved you, join us in keeping their memory alive. Like, share, and comment below with your thoughts and tributes to these remarkable warriors. Until next time, remember to honor all histories, for in them lies the true story of our shared humanity.